But I would like to talk in a minute about some of the prescription drug challenges.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know that is an issue that I do hear about quite frequently. And unfortunately, a lot of people share with me that they have to choose between buying groceries and buying their prescription drugs, and that should never be the case for anybody.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's the principle that needs to guide us so that people can afford medicines. It doesn't do you any good to get a diagnosis with respect to disease if you can't afford the treatment, whatever form that treatment takes. So we made a really important down payment start on lowering the cost of prescription drugs for Medicare recipients in the Inflation Reduction Act, right? So as of now, we've capped insulin at $35 a month for Medicare recipients. Starting in 2025, the total out-of-pocket costs that anybody will rack up in a year will be capped at $2,000. And we've also created mechanisms to deter companies from increasing the cost of their drugs more than inflation. And finally, and this is something many of us have been working on for many years, we give Medicare the power to negotiate drug prices, so that will lower the costs of drugs and make them more affordable. Here's the kicker. The Republicans in the House want to undo those provisions from the Inflation Reduction Act that will lower the cost of prescription drugs. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Big Pharma file lawsuits against it, as well as their allies. So this is under attack right now. What we did, which will do a lot of good for millions of Americans, is under attack. And so we need to make sure that we're fighting back.
Thank you so much for doing that. I greatly appreciate it. I think that will be an incredible help for millions of Americans.
We just need to make sure that the big special interests that want to unwind this and take us back are not successful. Meanwhile, we are working to try to make sure that we extend that lower cost of prescription drugs, not just to Medicare recipients, right, but to every American.
Absolutely.
You know, we've seen some of the drug companies limit the price of insulin for non-Medicare patients as well, in responding to pressure. But we need to make sure that all Americans can ultimately benefit from lower drug prices. And I've introduced legislation called the We Paid Act, which is based on a pretty simple principle, which is you and me and American taxpayers have invested billions of dollars in medical research at places like NIH, which we're proud to have in Maryland. This is a really good investment. But the issue is when big drug companies get the benefit of that taxpayer investment as they develop drugs, but then turn around and engage in price gouging. So that's not right. We, the taxpayers, pay for a lot of the research that went into the development of the drugs, and we shouldn't have to pay an extra premium on top of a reasonable price to make sure that we can afford and access those drugs. So we're going to keep pushing this bill, which would create a mechanism to keep those prices